Well, here we go again, another episode, first one ever on video with my good friend Alan Locher, who is the host, the CEO, the creative director, and the man behind the Locher Room. Alan, how are you? It's so good to see you.
I'm so well, Lisa. Thanks so much for asking me to join you today.
So, Alan, I've we were lucky enough to meet in New York just a few months
Hmm.
ago, and since that time, I've really had a chance to see some of this great work that you have started. Also, the pandemic really sort of forced, or really forced is maybe the wrong word, right? Maybe inspired you to start this project. But it's 300 episodes in, over $100,000 raised. I mean, could you have imagined when you started this project that this is where you'd be today?
No, no. My initial idea really was to do something on Instagram because as we were all home, in March of 2020, I was seeing other people on Instagram doing, Instagram lives, one-on-one interviews.
Yep.
And at the time, Instagram was only allowing you to do like we're doing one-on-one. Now you can have more than one person for an interview. So I initially called some of my fellow coworkers from As the World Turns and Guiding Light when I was in PR with them. And I thought maybe we could cheer people up because As the World Turns and Guiding Light had been off the air for 10 and 11 years when the pandemic hit.
Sure.
So it was just an initial, will some of my friends say yes? And they all said yes. And one of them suggested, Michael Park, an actor, suggested that I use StreamYard. And that really kicked it off. And
And
I
that's the
really
platform
never,
that you use for the Locker Room, and that's
yeah,
where and it's hosted on YouTube, so if folks wanna watch and see, that's where they'll find you, and I'll certainly make sure that in everything that we put up and out for this episode, folks can find you and tune in. You have a great but so a couple of friends is turned into 300 episodes. And that
yeah.
is a tremendous, I mean, this little podcast, here I am a year and a half into it. And I thought, maybe I could get my sister and my dad to tune in. I've made that joke 100 times, but it's the truth. I really wasn't sure that anyone would tune in and listen. And I've been lucky
Yeah.
enough to have, just like you, a long history and a long career of, working hard and working with some great people that want to share, how it is they got into this business. Talk to me a little bit about your background first, before we can.
Sure.
I want to get into the. I love the daytime and the creative piece of what you're doing. But tell me a little bit about your background because it's super impressive.
I always wanted to be in entertainment, but as a young kid, I had no idea, and I was actually working at a health club in New Jersey. I was probably a sophomore in college, and somebody overheard me having a conversation with a woman that I wanted to get in entertainment,
Uh,
and this woman was worked for ABC Television in human resources and
Interesting.
told me about their page program. And basically, that woman changed my life. I got a job as a page, and that really opened every door for me. I got to work on Regis and Kathy Lee. I helped launch that show into syndication. I was, a young college student and got
Wow.
hired by them right out of college,
Uh-huh.
which really doing this show, I learned, I think back to that and I learned so much from them just by being prepared for,
Hmm.
for an interview.
Right.
And really every door opened from that. Disney syndicated Regis and Kathy Lee,
Okay.
and then a job opened in the movie division of Disney,
So
and
that's
I
how that
spent,
Disney. Yeah, that's how that connection happened for you. That's interesting.
yeah, yep, and then I worked in movies. I worked on over 200 movies during The Little Mermaid and Lion King and Dead Poet Society and Sister
Wow.
Act, and
Oh my gosh.
really as a, coming right out of college and somebody who always loved entertainment, it was
Dream
really a
come true.
dream.
Yeah, yeah.
Dream.
Where were you? Were you in New York or were you in California?
I was in New York. Yeah, because New York's really the media capital.
Right.
So, all the talk shows were here, and at that time, Disney was putting out 60 movies a year. So we had talent coming in. One of the first people I worked with was Halle Berry. I still have a note from her. Like
Wow.
she was basically a nobody. She did that football movie. I wish I remembered. Can't remember what it was, but I have
No,
a note,
I don't.
from
Yeah,
Halle Berry.
that's cool.
Crazy.
That is
Crazy.
so cool. And then but you went on to continue in that space for a very, very long time. I mean, you've obviously got almost 30 years in that space where you were
Yeah.
just fortunate enough
Yeah.
to really sort of turn one tremendous opportunity into another.
Well, I grew up. My mother learned to speak English watching As the World Turns and Guiding Light.
Is
So
that
it was all, yeah. So it was always a part of my life. It probably sparked that interest in the entertainment business,
mhm,
and I had applied for a job at those shows when I graduated college, but I didn't know what I wanted to really do at that point.
mhm.
And basically, 10 years later, I ended up in the PR department and later running the PR department.
Your mom must have been so not because of course she was proud of you because you've done great things, but that really sort of because that's so real, that's something that's really sort of tangible and relatable. I make a joke all the time that like my family sort of was curious about what is this politics thing that Lisa's in and why is she changing jobs every 2 years. But I love that because it really is. It's like it's a show that we saw every single day, you know? I mean, get home from school, turn on Guiding Light. I mean, I don't know, I was a latchkey kid, so that was one of those things that we did, right? We came home and we
Yeah.
watched our daytime shows. But how cool for you to spend time on that. And that's to me, that is a tremendous amount of daily work. Like every single day is a new episode. Every single day is a new piece of content. And in the PR department for a soap opera,
Mhm.
what kind of work were you doing?
That's what's so fascinating to go from, picking up the telephone and saying you're calling from the Walt Disney Company to calling from As the World Turns or Guiding Light makes it a lot more challenging.
Interesting.
And and I love well, daytime's been around so long.
Mhm.
So you really have to have something unique to get mainstream media to pay attention. You definitely get the daytime media interested because that's their bread and butter.
That's right.
But mainstream, there's some really great things I'm proud of from daytime television. Um, did you watch Guiding Light? I can't remember. Is
I
that
did.
you did?
Yeah. Yeah.
So Reva and Josh
Uh-huh.
were having their third marriage. And do you remember on the Learning Channel, the show called A Wedding Story?
Yes, I do.
So they only did real life weddings. I got them to do a 30-minute episode as if Reva and Josh were a real life couple.
How cool. That's a
Yeah,
great crossover too, right? I mean, that's
right.
very cool.
So that you had to really think outside the box. And we, for As the World Turns, our executive producer took the show on the road to 10 college campuses where we went out, hired college students. We went out one week, did a casting session on college campuses,
Yeah.
hired kids, then came back a week later, shot those episodes. 4 weeks later, the shows aired. And then I went to the CBS morning show. And really, before there was reality television, we did a week's worth of live soap star screen tests with actors from the show
Uh-huh.
and those college students where they got to act live on the morning show, and
Oh,
then
how
viewers
cool.
voted online for them to win a role on the show.
That's really
So
cool.
you just had to think outside the box because it was just not as easy as saying you're calling from the Walt Disney Company.
But how crazy smart. I mean, also too, like I think that makes us better at the work we do today because we've had those experiences where we
Yeah.
had to be, quick on our feet and how do we cross over and how do we appeal to these different audiences? Also really smart because college kids may or may not have been into the soaps, but certainly you probably galvanized some loyal
Right.
fans just by doing that, folks that would be watching that show for many, many years afterward. That's so cool.
And we went to markets where the show did well too to
Right.
generate more
Right.
excitement.
Tell
So
me a little bit now. So you translate all of that to you worked in excuse me, a multimedia company right before the pandemic. Is that right? Well, tell me a little bit
a
about that
TV, a
work.
TV and movie tour company. I did PR marketing and sales for a television movie tour company, On Location Tours. We basically the Sex and the City tour, the Gossip Girl tour. We
Oh
showed
yeah.
people around New York City. Think about it. Your
How fun.
first your first glimpse of New York City, no matter what part of the world you come from,
Hmm.
is from the television shows and movies.
That's right.
And people come from all over the world to see where those things were filmed.
Sure,
I
sure.
mean, the Sex and the City tour still goes on 20 something years later.
My
People
gosh.
want to see where Carrie lived, or, the Magnolia Bakery, or,
Right.
where
Right.
they shopped, really,
Yeah.
where they shopped. And now with Sarah Jessica having a shoe store, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. It's back. But at the time, that was an immediate hit during the
I
pandemic,
I
right? That just
I
went
knew
away.
I said to my husband 2 weeks prior to losing my job, don't be surprised if it goes away. We did a huge group tour business from around the world. And
Right.
and once the pandemic hit the news, COVID hit the news, people, all of those school tours were canceling.
Right.
And the tour company had to shut its doors basically for
Gosh.
until the pandemic was
So
basically.
you are not the only communicator that had that same thought, because everyone I know that's on this side of the business, maybe not the journalists, because they knew that they would continue to be reporting in some way or another about COVID and all the other on the PR side. I mean, we have kids that we came up around the same time through this business. We know communications can sometimes be the first one to go. Um,
Mhm,
and so, but out of that experience came the locker room, that
mhm.
idea for this great show that you do now on YouTube. And tell me a little bit. I know you started, we talked a little earlier about how you started as something that was a feel good project, but you've really turned it into a little bit of a humanitarian project too, in ways that you're trying to advance not only conversations, but you're also bringing on people that we know, that we have grown up with. I mean, I know Kathy Lee was a guest at one point, but she's only one of those people that I'm pointing to. I mean, Bobby Spencer, I watched I saw your latest episode and I was like, yep, remember her. She looks terrific. But all of these people that you've brought on to have these great conversations about not only the industry, but also about issues. Tell me a little bit how that process works, because 300 episodes is a big deal. I mean, that's a lot of work.
It is when you see that number.
Sure. Significant.
Like I said, the pandemic, I was done. I didn't start looking for a job right away because the world was shut down. So
Absolutely.
I just kind of was like, as people said yes to be, and that was the other thing. So I initially started because I worked on As the World Turns and Getting Light. I was going to my friends, and that's all I thought it would ever be.
Sure.
And then the minute I started airing those, fans would write me and say, "Could you get this person? Could you get that person?"
I
And
love it.
I think one of the first ones, outside of my shows, was Susan Lucci, and she
That
said
was a good
yes.
one. Yeah.
And then I start, you start getting these yeses, and you just keep going. The one thing I didn't realize, like I knew daytime fans would love, and you reconnect them with their favorite characters.
Absolutely.
Um, we all, you and I having this conversation can learn. We all can learn from conversation if we all just listen.
Mhm.
And even though we're talking about acting, we just go to other places. They talk about their childhood. They talk about, growing up, their parents, or, yesterday, Kelsey Wang, I brought two of my worlds together. Kelsey Wang is one of very few Asian American actors on a soap opera with a contract.
Ah,
And
interesting.
she was one of my tour guides at On Location Tours.
Oh, no kidding. Oh,
Yes.
wow.
And, she was talking about just breaking the news to her parents, growing up as a child of Asian immigrants. Being an actress is not something that your parents,
Not high on the list
are,
of,
it's, yeah, exactly.
I
So
bet not.
there's just things you can learn. And, and then I started Conversations with Alan, which is sort of a sub series because my parents were Holocaust survivors.
Yes, I saw some of that.
And, I initially wanted to do one episode that featured two guests and sort of an expert about anti-Semitism.
Mhm.
And one of the guests I wanted, it's her birthday today, actually, Mindy Corporon, sadly in 2014 lost her 14-year-old son and her father to a neo-Nazi who wanted to know what it felt like to kill Jewish people,
Oh,
and
no.
killed three non-Jewish people.
Mm.
And she asked me what I wanted to do with this show. And I told her I just wanted to educate and enlighten people about anti-Semitism and all of this. And she turned to me and she said, "You now have a platform. Why would you do one show?"
Love it.
And so conversations with Alan really started because of that conversation with
And you've
Mindy.
expanded it to lots of different issues, you know, whether it's about um, coming out as a young adult or talking to, you know, people of various backgrounds or the awareness around all of these issues. I love it. I love what you've done. And I think that it's tremendous. And the fact that you've also found a way to parlay that into raising money for some of these tremendous charities is dynamite, Alan. It's just so great and something to be very proud of. Because you have this platform now, right? And and
Yeah,
here, you know, 2 years, not quite 2 years into this, and here you are. It's cool. But I want you to tell
thanks.
me, um, because you should be proud of it. But and you're loving it. I can tell because even when you're doing the show, it's a passion project. You're having a great
Mhm,
time, and it's a testament to all the good relationships you have with folks from the work you've done. But you also now are working in and working for a company that is still in the communication space, in the public
mhm,
affairs space. Talk to me a little bit about TrueScope, and then tell me
mhm.
a little bit about how they've approached it. Like you've come to them, you obviously came on board already as the host of the Locker Room.
I did, yeah.
And I have to believe that it was a little bit of a marketing piece. Like this is something that for them is also a great. Anyway, I'll let you tell the story. Tell me how that
Yeah,
came together.
it's funny. It's how worlds collide. The woman who hired me, Meg Crumbine, who's the president of our company in North America. Um, I was her client when I worked at Disney. She worked for video monitoring service.
Interesting.
And she saw that I was looking for a job during the pandemic and saw that I was hosting the show and she loved it. And she came to me and told me about TrueScope, which is incredible. It's a media intelligence company, basically a fully global platform that delivers relevant media insights in real time for us, the
Yeah.
communications folks, to
Yep.
manage brand reputation, track competitors' issues. And for me, I started at Disney as the low man on the totem pole, where I would spend
You
hours
did all that work yourself.
ripping out newspapers.
I
I had
remember well.
newspaper ink for days, faxing this across the country. And now with a SaaS platform, you can do this work. And it's not only just compiling media coverage, it's really analyzing the media coverage, sentiment, and who's tuning in and conversation. So um, when they came to me that they were bringing this company to the US, and, I definitely, I grew the Locker Room. I really was not ready to give it up.
Yeah.
I needed a job, but they loved what I've done. John Kroll, who's our CEO, they love what I've done. They allow me to still do it while I work full time, and I'm eternally grateful.
Well, I think we live in that space now, wouldn't you say, where people have they have their own platforms and they have opportunities to be, sharing good information. And as long as it's positive and in concert with the work that TrueScope is doing or in concert with the company that you work for, why not? Right? I mean, it feels just and it's good. It's good visibility for you. It's a validator for all the great relationships you have and the work you do in the communication space. And TrueScope, what I love about the conversations we've had about them is that for so long in earned media, especially, it's really hard to measure that. You know, as you go to clients and you say, we're going to do these great things for you in the corporate world, metrics are really a lot of success. And I think the last pillar of measurement has always been earned media, right? Like, how do we measure
Hmm.
sentiment? How do we measure eyeballs? How do we, get a sense of how this is impacting the conversation? And that work is done by lots of different companies, but I love the work that you guys are doing. And I've obviously introduced you to lots of colleagues of mine because I think it's a great tool. And it's one that, in the conversations I have with journalists, it's a little bit like telling them about how we do our work when we talk about measurement and metrics and all those other
Hmm.
things. But they actually are curious about it because it also is a validator back to their own news platform. That they
Absolutely, and
had.
the work that they're doing, the stories that they're writing,
That's right.
and that's the interesting thing about TrueScope too is, so many other platforms just like TrueScope. But the big difference is ours is built. John Kroll, the CEO, has worked in communications. It's not built by tech people.
Yes,
It's built
that's the
by
difference.
people who've worked in communications,
Right.
who know what you and I need to do our
Right.
jobs better.
That's right.
It's a big difference,
It's user friendly for those of us who weren't tech
Yeah.
kids. But I love that. And I love that he was in communications and he has that sensibility about the kinds of metrics and the kinds of data that are so relevant and really, help keep our clients happy, but also validate the work that we do, because the work we do is hard and it's getting harder, right? I mean, I feel like it's just the marketplace is so difficult to break into because of the variety of spaces that you're pitching. Um, and I think that that's something that we'll continue to get better at. I love that you and I have shared the success that we have in getting our colleagues and our friends to come on and do these shows with us.
Mhm.
Uh, but I think that that's also a measure of good communications, in that, you maintain these great relationships. You've obviously done well, but they wouldn't be coming on your show if they didn't know that you were someone who was an honest and good broker who knows how to produce something that's worthwhile and worth their time.
It's really, I mean, we demonstrate every day we do one of these shows, our communications and people skills,
Yeah.
which, you know, uh, I didn't think of it when I started it again because it was, on a whim. But as the days goes by and reactions, I, I have almost 20,000 subscribers from just organic, not me spending money to advertise the
Right.
locker room. It's because people are
How do you
sharing it.
That's so interesting though. So tell me, if you will, how do you promote the show? So what kinds of things, what kind of features are you using? Is it primarily
Oh,
organic?
yeah, social media basically. I mean, I will post on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok,
Mm,
on YouTube, the community page on YouTube. I've built a website, thelockerroom.com. That just is a little more difficult to maintain.
it's good
As you
though.
know,
You've done a
it
really good
is
job on it. Yeah,
full-time job, though,
it
it's
is.
hard to keep everything active. I'm scheduling social media stuff. Um, Thankfully, there is still daytime media and daytime press, and they will promote the daytime audiences. I don't really, when I have a prime time, I don't have a lot of time to really be pitching to a list of, TV editors. And to be honest, some of them won't promote virtual stuff anymore.
Right.
I've gotten that when I've had a big celebrity or something. They
Are
won't
you a
promote
little bit of their
virtual.
competition though? I have to believe there's a little bit of competition too, because who else is
Yeah,
doing this kind
probably.
of stuff? Yeah, it's good for you.
Well, shortly after I started, like Entertainment Weekly started, they did a couple soap reunions, but it was after I had started it.
You were the
So
first
it was a nice,
validator.
compliment. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, before I let you go, because I only have a few more minutes of your time today, I was curious. Remind me again some of the charitable groups that you are raising money for, please.
Um, so at the start of the pandemic, we did a lot for pandemic charities.
Hmm.
Restaurant Strong, Feeding America, the Autism Society of America. Um, a lot for autism we have done. Feeding America, I'm trying to think. I can't think of the other charity we did.
I'll list a couple of them, and I didn't mean to put you on the spot,
Yeah,
but I
yeah,
did want to
yeah.
make sure that you got a chance
The
to mention some
Autism
of them.
Society of America is a big one.
It's
And
great.
and yeah, and we one of the actors from As the World Turns has his own theater company. And basically he literally opened it like a week before the pandemic hit.
Oh, oh my
And so
God.
we did an As the World Turns reading with the entire class. And he just recently reminded me that that benefit helped keep his theater alive during the pandemic.
That's
Like he was
terrific.
able to, so it is something to, to be proud of. I have not, every day I get reminded of some of the impact. A woman, just sent she's sending a script that she had won at a donation.
Hmm.
Um, Her husband passed away from COVID just recently, sadly,
Oh,
and
wow.
she shared just her husband's story of making fun of her watching soaps, but she wanted, it brought a smile to her face, and she wanted to give that smile to someone else by donating the script back.
Oh, that's so cool. Oh, that's so
Uh,
cool. Well, one of the last question I typically ask my guests
mm.
is for a recommendation for someone else to be a future guest on the podcast. Is there someone that's in your world, someone that you've worked with in the communications or in journalism that you might recommend for a future
Oh,
episode?
oh wow. Robin Shallow.
And where is Robin?
Robin has her own PR agency. Um, Robin Com. Robin and I worked together at Disney 30 years ago.
Wow.
Um, and we've remained friends. She has worked at some really amazing companies. She's just incredibly smart and works with a lot of CEOs. Um, she would be quite an intelligent
I
comms
love it.
person to
Yeah.
speak with.
Awesome. Well, I'm gonna.
And
I'll
yeah, I'll connect to you for
Okay, yes,
sure.
please, please. And I think that that's the thing. Like, I started this as a journalism project, but the more I get into the conversations, the more important it is to, I think, to bring in some of those great points of view, like yourself, like Robin and others. I spoke to a woman a couple weeks back who was the head of communications for football for all of the University of Missouri. That's a crazy
Oh,
big job. I mean,
wow.
like some really cool people that are in our space, working with journalists, having conversations and trying to advance, their own stories about their own brands and the things that they're working on. And I think that that's also just, it's great to get that point of view. So I would love to talk to Robin, and I love that connection.
Like I said, we all learn from conversations. It's
I
just
agree.
really it's something that if we all just open the
I know.
ears.
That is a bigger conversation for
Well,
many,
and
many
it's
of
so
our people.
important that we have to listen as well as hosts.
Yes.
You have to realize, like, you really have to make it a point that you're listening because of the interaction and the reaction and the spontaneity that I find. I make a list of questions always, but somebody says something and I follow it up because I want to learn more
Yeah.
of that topic that they hit
Yeah.
on.
Yeah, no doubt about it. No doubt about it. Well, Alan, I'm so grateful for your time today, and I wish you all the best with the locker room. I'm going to send it out to the folks that pay attention to my podcast, and let's keep in touch because I think there'll be more opportunities
Absolutely.
to work together, my friend.
I love it. Thank you so much, Lisa. Appreciate it.
Thank you.